This, I think, is going to be a pretty quick meeting. We have made some awesome progress. Thanks, everyone. I just have to call this out. This is going to go nowhere, but we have no blockers left on our V1 Alpha 1 milestone. We have got everything in. I think it was Harry's PR yesterday that merged, or maybe it was, I don't know, whenever it merged, that got us past our last blocker. So thank you to everyone who contributed there. I think we are good to go for V1 Alpha 1 launch, but there's also some great PRs in progress to get some of our nice to haves in as well. So spend a little bit of time going through those. And one thing I wanted to mention, I know, well, we'll look at the milestone. There have been some, like we have 3 PRs right now that are up against V1 Alpha 1 nice to haves, and that's awesome. It would be great if, in addition to that, if, I think, let's see, I think one of these, I should close this myself. I fixed it. Sorry, I did not solve it. My PR this morning fixed this and I didn't appropriately close it. So I'll deal with that. But Danian, I think you had volunteered for one of these as well.
I haven't put my name on one yet, but
okay,
I'm working on one of these.
Okay. So yeah, that's great. But I think we are getting awfully close here. We have conformance test framework. This one, I think we might be able to close. Yeah, okay, we're actually in a good place on all our nice to haves as well.
Rob, really quickly too, on that user guide, yesterday and today I've been working on a guide that is similar to Harry's TLS configuration for HTTP route, that just kind of walks through, gives background on HTTP route and what it is, gives some example configuration, things like that.
That sounds amazing. Cool. Okay, and that does that overlap with, I know Harry has some examples of, selecting HTTP routes across multiple namespaces or something like that, but it sounds like this is more focused just on HTTP route and not so much the gateway HTTP route relationship.
Right, it really, it borrows a lot from the HTTP route API docs, but kind of puts everything on a single page that, a user that is interested in understanding and experimenting with service APIs, I feel like one of the first things that they're going to do is mess around with an HTTP route. And so having, a simple guide top to bottom that gives some background, walks through some, what a route, HTTP route consists of, specifically around, the matching rules and so forth. It gives an example of that kind of stuff. So
did you guys want to talk for a second about how to merge these all together? Because I think
yeah, let's Mark, you have a PR up here, or no, it's closed. But
I canceled it because I have to break it up, but I was planning on doing that later today.
Okay,
I could share for a second what it looks like, and we can talk about the structure, because I think that Dan's example would help a lot in addition.
Sure. Did you want to share your screen, or just talk through, or have me? Okay.
Yeah, I've got just the local copy running here, and we can kind of talk through.
Let me see how to do that. Sure, there's probably a better way, but you should be able to share your screen now.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, cool. I am sharing my screen. Okay. So first of all, I felt like we really need a much better introduction page that kind of, for someone who doesn't know what it is, that very quickly like, oh, okay, I get it. What is it? How is it different from Ingress? What does it do? where to get started, API reference and guides, and then how to get involved, which is kind of links to. So it's just kind of like an expansion of the existing intro. And then we have the concepts. I did think that there was the API concepts right now is kind of a combination of design topics that were like more for like, hey, here's our thoughts behind the design, and API concepts were like, here's how it actually works. And so I did think it made sense to separate those out into API concepts and design concepts. Like some of the things I think that Harry wrote around conflicts and performance, I'm not sure where this originally came from, but I thought these were kind of separate from like how the API actually works. They're kind of like the theory behind the API. I don't know if that makes sense to split out in that way or not.
So I think that makes sense to split it out. There is already a couple of PRs that have been merged in, which does a little bit of exactly this, but a little differently. So there will be some conflicts for sure. Mark.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the overlap because Harry had been working on something very similar to that split. I think you did it slightly differently, but you pulled out most of the same stuff into a separate page. And
okay,
so
cool.
I think that's a good idea.
Then I'll just look at what Harry's done. I guess, is that already merged?
One of it is merged, one it is in progress, but whatever you have inside the API concepts page, Mark, I think we should definitely like you should PR it and like we should get that in. Like there's a lot of valuable updates here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do small updates so it's easier to merge it. And then for the gateway, I think I think a couple of us had each of us had a simple gateway one. Probably the same kind of idea is just like, what is the absolute bare minimum simplest route that you can do? Essentially no matching at all, just send it directly to one service. They match all traffic. And so that's what this was.
Yeah, that's great.
And we can use the image, and maybe Harry, if you have a more expanded example, we can merge that. Just let me know what pieces are useful.
Yes. Yeah, this is great.
I don't know, does this align with the example that you had?
It's a little more complex example what I have, but I think we should definitely include this here again. So.
Okay, and then Daniel, your updates might be helpful here. I don't have a whole lot of text. I just have kind of an image, and then kind of an example of kind of what, just showing the different varieties of matching that are possible, and showing how the resources align to it.
I'm just thrilled to see graphics in here. That's next level here.
Yeah, and
yeah, I shared.
Clear.
Go ahead, Harry. Sorry.
Makes things so much more clear. So I also really
yeah.
like it here. Yeah.
I'm big on the images, but I also shared this in the deck of these images so we can start using them in a consistent way. So if you have examples, I'll ping the link in the chat. And so if you want to just add to the same deck, and we can keep all the images in the same deck, and we'll have consistent imagery throughout all the docs.
Awesome.
I used these Cisco icons just because they're like the most standard thing out there.
Cool.
And then the multi-tenant.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark. No, I thought you were going to keep going.
I guess I didn't contribute the multi-tenant gateway one yet, but that is basically, get cross namespace gateways and routes, and showing just how that works with different teams.
I think it would be really valuable if you made a PR to add the two guides that you do have, the simple gateway and complex routing. I think those are awesome. Having looked at them just now. And then maybe a separate PR for the rework of the intro page, because I think that's also, the main, whatever our main page is. I think that's also great.
That makes sense. I'll contribute the simple and the complex and the intro, and then we'll take it from there.
And
that's awesome. Thank you.
And the multi gateway is already like multi namespace gateway. There is a guide that was merged yesterday. So take a look into that, and maybe there are more things to explore there. So if you want to contribute, maybe, add a patch on top of that guide, which is already.
Yeah, I have an image for that one, so I'll adjust it to whatever the example is. All right, Rob.
That'd be amazing.
Rob, can I share what I have really quick, and let's get some feedback on
Yeah,
what we should do with it.
You should be able to now.
Share. Everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
All right, so we basically just dropped a new guide in here for HTTP route. I used Harry's TLS guide along with the API docs as kind of the guardrails for this. But as I mentioned, I thought, okay, well, this, HTTP route will be one of the first routes that users want to play around with. Give them a quick introduction of what HTTP route is, and the rules, right? Quick illustration, and little different than what you did, Mark, with using kind of the Cisco icons. As I mentioned before, I kind of looked at our ingress documentation, and I kind of use that for guidance here. And so that's why this looks and feels very similar. But I think the keys to the HTTP route is matches the filters and the forward too. So spend some time putting it together, the diagram, what matches is. Again, a lot of this comes from the API docs, but we just bring it together in one place, make it look pretty. The filters I'm still working on here, need to add the forward to, and then an HTTP route example. And it seems like maybe with your guide, we're maybe instead of this being a kind of a simple example, maybe I make it a little more complex, or I just keep this as WIP, and then when you merge your stuff in, maybe I rework it into your stuff, or I don't know what.
Yeah, I was gonna say this looks really awesome, and but it does feel a little more conceptual rather than a guide. I wonder if does this belong better in the API concepts guide or the API concept page?
I was just gonna say the same thing. I'm not sure how we want to structure this, but I would love to have a page like this for each route type, potentially for each API type.
I agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Plus one, I think it belongs more in the concept section too. So
perfect. Okay. And Rob, cool. I agree with you. For every API type, I think having something like this would be helpful. So maybe this is kind of the first step towards that. Cool.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is a great pattern to follow and copy for other route types. And, I think especially if we had something comparable to this for Gateway, that would be really helpful. Yeah.
So there'll be like, so there's like the API, like general API concepts page, which kind of is a high level concepts for everything. And then there'll be a breakout page for each like gateway concepts, HTTP route concepts. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it could be inside concepts. It could also be inside. I'm not sure how. It's almost like we need a new section, almost a new resources section or something like that, and then we can maybe split out. Okay, so whoever's screen sharing right now, we have the API resources page, which is kind of a start for each one. So maybe gateway class, gateway, etc. Whatever we have here can be split out into its own page, and HTTP route becomes one of our most detailed pages, and we continue to build on what we have inside. So basically API resources becomes a top level section, and then we have pages for each resource inside that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, let me play around with this. Let me spend some more time looking through just how the concepts are organized.
Yeah.
And then I'll move this from a guide into the concepts as part of kind of a, I don't know if we want to do it in one PR, like do we have one PR that does the reorganization and then a separate one that basically brings this HTTP route into here, or do we want to just do it all as one PR that reorganizes things and plops HTTP route in there?
Do you mind taking a look at the resources page one more time? It seems like we have a significant amount of content around gateway class, and then another significant amount for gateway. So
We've
it
got
feels like
nothing
both
for-
of those are really just two different pages in my mind.
Yeah,
And then
I
we
agree.
just add
Yeah.
HTTP route.
I mean, I think these could just be all under concepts, really, where it's just like one is the API concepts page becomes a page called like overview,
Yeah.
and then there's a gateway one, gateway class, HTTP route, and they're all conceptual in nature.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I like this. So API concepts becomes like API introduction, API overview, something like that.
Yeah.
And then instead of having API resources, we have a link for each API resource. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Mark? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, at least we'd have enough to start for a gateway class, gateway, and HTTP. Well, with your contribution, HTTP route, which I think would be awesome.
Cool. All right. Let me work on that as part of this PR I'll push.
One general note, I think this was Rob had brought up this previously. So right now, whenever we have any YAML manifest snippets in documentation, we make sure to add it into the examples directory in the repository. So that takes care, if you have any breaking changes or our examples are up to date and manifest in documentation is up to date. So just keep that in mind, and if we can follow that, it just makes life easier to catch things in the CI.
Yeah.
Hey,
that's the point.
Harry, I missed the point that you were making there. I think I just got distracted. Do you mind repeating that for me, please?
Sure. So we have YAML manifests that are being displayed inside our guides currently. Those are all references to YAML files inside the examples directory, right? So what that gives us is that if in our CI run, we make sure that those YAMLs are valid, at least syntactically valid, and they apply to a kube cluster. So that's how we have organized it, right? We have not put in any YAML directly inside the guide itself, right? Like if you see here, you have that include directive. So that takes care that our documentation don't get out of sync with our types and CRDs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me share my screen again. Don't mean to just snatch that away from me. But for example, like in my HTTP route work here, now this, because it's just kind of like a snippet of an example resource, this doesn't call, let me show you actually in the code here, right? What happened to my mouse? I lost my mouse. So again, I followed kind of what you did with the TLS guide, where the full example, which is this down here, comes from the examples directory. So that whenever this example gets updated, this will be updated as well. But when it's just kind of like a snippet here, I'm not sure if there's like, should we have
I think
this example snippets or?
No, I think that's okay, because in the conceptual section, basically the point of the guides, and I like it when guides are totally atomic and self-encompassing, and that like they can be executed on their own. So generally they should be relatively small, and each guide should have the YAML. But for the conceptual pages where we have snippets, we don't have to save that, because that's not like actual anything you can run, because it's just conceptual. But each guide should be, if you had a gateway controller available to you, it's something you could take it and you could deploy the whole thing. And so each of those should definitely have, each of the guides should represent exactly one deployment, like one thing, one use case, and each of those should have the full example in the YAML in that examples folder.
Yeah, and so whenever I kind of call out like with this example, it does come from our examples directory, but I think where I've seen in other places in our docs when it's just kind of like a portion of a resource or something like that, that's actually embedded. And again, I try to kind of use Harry, your TLS guide, as a reference. Does that make sense to you? I mean, I think
Yeah,
I'm
that sounds
following.
good. Sounds good. Yep.
Cool.
Thanks.
So just as well, actually, will you still have that up, or if you don't mind pulling that back up? Sorry. One thing I'm wondering here is if we're pulling this out of guides and into concepts, maybe that last section shouldn't actually include that full example, and it should instead just reference guides that use this resource. So as an example, this is HTTP route. For further reading, try these guides out. Try these specific examples.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
And I could stop sharing, but I think Bowie brings up a good point on chat. It may seem insignificant, but it would be, I think, cool to have a logo associated with the project.
Yeah,
we need better marketing. I agree.
Yeah. I don't know how to arrange for that, but I feel like it's possible. Maybe Mark, you seem to have some level of graphical knowledge or connections. Maybe you can help us out with that.
Let me see if I can come up with something, or you know what, I'll just go and pull some people that know things about UX and UI, and we can see if we can get a cool logo.
Awesome.
Should we create an issue to track it, or is that unusual?
Yeah, why not? Because we can, put ideas in there, and people can say, what kind of logo we'd want to have. We probably need I don't know. I guess are we keying off the name of the API or the name of the group, like service APIs or gateway/future gateway name? But that's maybe a discussion for the time.
I think, that is a big discussion. I think I would prefer to stick with service APIs, the project, because I do think this is a broader, it is not just gateway, it is not just routes, it is not just a single resource, it is a broader scope. Yeah, but good question.
Yeah,
makes
sense.
Let me pull this back up. All right, so yeah, that's exciting. It's really awesome to see the progress on docs come together. I think we're on pace to have a really compelling V1 Alpha 1 launch. So thanks to everyone for getting that together. Pull back up the V1 Alpha 1 milestone, and I'll look at the ones that are important soon. I don't see Rich on this call, but I'll follow up with him after. I think he knows the little bits left to do on this one. Harry has a PR, which we'll cover today, on case sensitivity for header matching. Same for listener status. We have lots of work going on for documentation and user guide, and conformance test framework is something that we've talked about, but it's certainly not anything we need to solve between now and Wednesday. So yeah, okay, great. I think Harry has mentioned here that maybe we don't need a user guide specific issue anymore because I created another issue that's awfully similar, which is adding examples to documentation. I don't know how much value this issue provides anymore, so I'm fine with closing it unless anyone's actually tied to it. Cool. All right. I will keep on running then. There's a couple PRs from Harry that would be great to get through. I've added some initial feedback here, but there was some ambiguity around header matching and specifically case sensitivity. And Harry, you've updated some bits here. I had a couple additional suggestions. But the key is that obviously header field names have to be matched case insensitively to, go along with the RFC. But the RFC does not say anything about case sensitivity inside the header field value. So that's a little bit more ambiguous.
Header field value is case sensitive.
Right. But
header value is case sensitive.
Sure. But where I'm going with this is we have a regular expression type that it is certainly conceivable that you could put a /i in your regex, and then it would be case insensitive matching. And so we don't want, whatever we put in our spec, we don't want to prohibit case insensitive regex matching. So we don't want to be like so sold on case sensitive matching that we exclude this potential use case.
Wait, when you say there could be a trailing /i, that implies there's also a leading slash. So are regular expression values supposed to be surrounded by slashes?
Okay, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
It sounds like this may be underspecified.
The slash thing is only like a sedism, right? And then BI inherits from sed.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a regular expression ism.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Bo is right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
you have it in sed and Perl and Vi and pretty much everything that, where you can put in a /regex/ and then options.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Go ahead, sorry, Rob.
no, go ahead.
Oh, you might be thinking of JavaScript. That's just inherited from sed.
So
Yes.
So I think we know that header names are not case sensitive and header values are case sensitive, and we do not want to be prescriptive of how regular expression, the header match type of regular expression translates into like case sensitivity. Is that right?
That's where I was going with that. But if there really is universal support, like if it is universally used as case sensitive, which seems likely, then maybe it is fine to say every header match value needs to be case sensitively matched. Just trying to think of any potential exceptions to that rule.
Yeah, this is one of those things where we need implementers to experiment and see, like, not experiment, but reaching out to them and see.
I mean, if you're doing like Perl compatible, then you have all those options like parenthesis $I parenthesis, but it just seems like we can't really say anything about, like, we haven't specified what syntax, whether it's PCRE or basic or extended POSIX or what. So it seems like there's no reason we should be prescriptive about case sensitivity within regular expression matching if we're not prescriptive about the rest.
Right. So in that case, what you're saying is regular expression could potentially be case insensitive matching if specified by the expression in certain syntaxes.
Well, I'm saying it seems like that whole area is implementation specific.
Right. So I guess that comes to where do we draw the line on implementation specific? Because even implementation specific things, we do provide some basic set of guidance, maybe. Obviously, exact does need to be case sensitive matching, but maybe for both regular expression and implementation specific matching, we say it is up to the implementation, or as far as case sensitivity?
In regular
Or-
expression, you have to explicitly say it's case insensitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rob, I'm not quite following.
Well, why isn't it implementation specific if the rest of the syntax is?
What? Say that again.
Okay, so if things like, is it basic, extended, PCRE, other regular expression syntax, if that's implementation specific, we're not being prescriptive about that, then within the context of regular expressions, why would you be prescriptive about case sensitivity?
Sure. So what you're saying is leave it unspecified, and only specify case sensitivity for exact matching.
Right.
Oh, I see. This is the header key.
No, this is header value.
It's the value.
Yeah.
Oh, then we shouldn't say anything about case insensitivity. That should be completely deleted. Because there's no such notion in the value.
Right. So what? Okay. So let's back up a second. We do need to say that field names must always be matched case insensitively, and that's solved by this bit here. What the majority of this discussion, I think, is about is how we specify how header match type should be used as far as case sensitivity. Right here, we've said field value matches are case sensitive. Is that appropriately descriptive?
We should just delete that statement.
Okay. Should we? It feels like there is value in saying that for at least exact match, that because this is something that is reasonably well spec'd, and so in that case to say, okay, this is also case sensitive, and then to leave regex and implementation specific.
But then don't you have to put that statement everywhere you match a string?
Okay.
Like, isn't it well understood when you have string matching that it just is case sensitive?
Sure. I think there could be some confusion because because we've gone out of our way to say that this adjacent value, this, the field name is case insensitive. So it could help to say, but the value is not. I generally agree that, okay, string matching, you can assume it is case sensitive. But since we have already gone out of the way to say this one thing is case insensitive that's right beside this other concept.
Sure, that's fine. I see it's a doc that only applies to match exact.
Yeah.
Don't we need to document regular expression and implementation specific as well?
We do that, I think.
Yeah, it's this is a little. I think we need to clean this up a little bit because there's some documentation here for header matching and some up here.
I see.
But
okay, yeah, maybe that's the asymmetry that is causing us to discuss this.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like there is at least some value in clarifying that at least for header match type exact, field value matches are case sensitive, and then this statement here, the regular expression, I think this also generally applies to implementation specific just read the implementations documentation. Seems appropriate here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that, and then we just don't need to say the header match.
So the header match type
exact
applies to the value of the header. It does not apply to the name of the header. And the
Yes.
name
Yeah,
of
that's what I'm
Yes.
confused.
that's why I think that's causing the confusion here. That header name.
Yeah, because isn't the key always
yes
not sensitive? And we should document it there
Yes.
and then just delete this.
Yes. Yeah, I think this probably can go away. And this is likely sufficient here, must be always matched case insensitively, field names specifically. And then I think this part gets a little confusing because the header match type is irrelevant.
I see. Yeah. So yeah, header value match type. Is there value in changing that type name?
Oh. I don't. I think just a little bit better documentation. Go doc around it is fine.
Okay.
Should we change it to header value match type?
Yeah, sure.
I mean that's what I was thinking, and I don't know if more verbose.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any issue with that. Yeah,
We should also just change it to value match type.
Okay. Yeah, I don't care too much on the naming here. Header value match type may be a bit more clear. I definitely, after I read through this, I had to read through the rest of the Go doc just to make sure I understood what this was actually matching based on. So yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So yeah, I think I have some action items from this. So let me go back, refine this, and then we can come back to it again.
Cool. And sure, value match type. Sure. The next one is, I think, pretty straightforward. We came into, I think this was from pre-alpha API review feedback. We got some feedback that with our updates to listener, port may not be sufficient to uniquely identify a listener. Harry, you can actually provide context here.
Yeah, so I think the previous comment was, port is a unique listener port for which the message is reported the status. And if there are more than one listener that share the same port, like imagine a TCP and a UDP listener sharing port X, then all the combined status of such listener is reported in a single listener status element, which creates a lot of confusion, right? So what I'm doing here is providing the necessary bits to ensure that each listener status can be tied to a specific listener. I opted for this instead of adding a name of the listener, because that felt like another field that the user has, another name that a user has to think about, and it's not really necessary. So yeah, that's what it does. Like I tie the status to the correct listener. That's some metadata we are adding here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This is my preferred approach as well to solve this. I already approved this PR, but I wanted somebody else to sanity check it and add an LGTM. But I think this is remarkably straightforward and a good improvement.
It is a little weird that the key is 2 fields plus an optional field. Like I'd almost rather that you had to give a name for each listener, but I won't argue too strenuously if you prefer this approach.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I think the issue with adding a name to listener is it just adds that kind of overhead for users. Like I imagine this being a relatively the host name being required being a relatively rare thing. Maybe it's not. But the idea that even for the simple use cases, you have to add that additional field, that listener name, feels unfortunate. And you know, as much as we're trying to build an advanced API that solves, you know, as many use cases as possible, I think we still want our simple case to have as few fields required as possible. That's my bias. I don't know if that's the correct approach, but that's where I tend to lean towards.
Fair enough.
Harry, I don't know. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's just that overhead that I was avoiding. I think that's about it. But we could look, I think we this is like a smaller change. I think that does not affect. I mean, it would be a breaking change, but I think we can revisit this as well. It's you know, we can, like, we need some feedback, you know, on how this works.
So what you're saying is if this doesn't work out in V1 Alpha 1 and V1 Alpha 2, we could go towards a listener name or something like that instead.
Like that. I mean, most cases, you know, I think this should be enough. Like just adding a protocol to a listener would be enough. If somebody's configuring a lot of host names, like, then yeah, this becomes a little complicated. But I think that would be a smaller, that would be a smaller fraction of our users who would do that. So it's still, you know, adding enough metadata, but not, you know, sort of overwhelming the user or the implementer.
Is there room for middle ground here? I don't even know that I'm actually suggesting this, but just throwing it out there of removing host name and kind of falling back to this weird thing of if port and protocol overlap, like if they're reused multiple times, they are collapsed into this one status. So if you have multiple host names for the same port and protocol.
Yeah, I think so. We could do that. The only reason is then I would expect, you know, like host name being same, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of statuses would be reported in that case, right? Like one listener, you know, like there are multiple any, like, you know, header host name match type of any listeners and things like that, right? And there the host name actually does carry some value there. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's it. I mean, that's why I thought, like, you know, let's keep it optional, and the implementer can decide to skip host name altogether, right? Which probably you know, does not complicate things a bit too much.
Yeah.
Couldn't
Yeah, I
we
mean,
simplify and say you must have host name and status if it's in the listener spec?
that's exactly what I was just going to say. It is an optional field in listener spec, I believe. But if we just say, if we just carry it down, it adds very minimal overhead and seems to, you know, provide better consistency.
I see. So yeah, that makes sense. So just remove that line of if port plus protocol can
Yeah.
just remove that line, and I think we have what we need.
Yeah. Agreed.
That makes sense.
Cool. Great. Okay. Well, I know we're past time here, but yeah, thank you for the work on these PRs. Just let us know whenever you update these, and I'll take another look. Yeah. Great. We'll talk to everyone this coming Wednesday for a live V1 Alpha 1 release. That should be fun. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.